minute that I start the recording. We have a Sicha from Chelik Ches, Likkutei Sichos, on the first Sicha on Parshas Bamidbar. This Sicha will not just speak about the Parsha and an event at the beginning of this week's Parsha, but also will connect it with the upcoming Yom Tov of Shavuos. 1. In most years, we read Parshas Bamidbar on the Shabbos before the Yom Tov, the holiday of Shavuos, the time of Matan Torah, of the giving of the Torah. Every Torah reading shares a connection with the period of the year during which it is read. This is particularly true regarding the relationship between Parshas Bamidbar and Matan Torah. The giving of the Torah, Matan Torah, is described as the wedding between Hashem and the Jewish people. And the custom is that on the Shabbos before his wedding, the chassan, the groom, is called up to the Torah, gets an aliyah as a preparation for the wedding. From this it is understood that Hashem's command to count the Jewish people, Suas, Rosh Chaldas Bnei Yisrael, take a census of the entire congregation of the children of Israel, that begins the Torah reading, shares a connection, and serves as a preparation for Hashem's wedding with the Jewish people at the giving of the Torah. 2. The above can be clarified by first explaining Rashi's comment regarding the census at the beginning of the Kriyas HaTorah, of the Torah reading. Since he cherishes them, he counts them at all times. Kol Shah. On the first of Nisan, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the Mishkan was erected, the sanctuary was erected, and on the first of Rosh Chodesh Iyar, he had them counted. On the surface, Rashi's comments raises several questions. The first question is, cherished objects are counted often because one wants to know their sum. Since they are cherished and dear, each one of them is important, and one continuously desires to know their exact sum. However, Hashem knows the sum of the Jewish people, even without counting them. Why then did he command Moshe and Aaron to count them? Another question, since the counting of the Jewish people discussed here was associated with Hakamas HaMishkan, erecting the sanctuary, as Rashi states, when he came to rest his presence upon them, which is in the Mishkan, the census should have been taken on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the first of Nisan, the day on which the Mishkan was erected. Or if it was impossible on that day, because it was, a very busy day with Hakamas HaMishkan, at least on the following day. Why was the census delayed an entire month until Rosh Chodesh Iyar, the first of Iyar? A third question, why did the census have to be conducted by both Moshe and Aaron? This differs from the practice in all previous censuses, when the Yidden were counted after they departed Mitzrayim, and other previous occasions. The Torah does not mention who conducted the censuses. When the census was taken after many Jews died following the sin of the Chet Egel, the Torah states, Hashem spoke to Moshe, when you take a census of the Bnei Yisrael, meaning Moshe conducted the census alone. Here, by contrast, regarding the census taken after Hakamas HaMishkan, the erection of the sanctuary, it is specifically stated that Aaron had to conduct the census together with Moshe. So these are the three questions that the Rebbe presents for us. Section 3, to explain all of the above according to the inner dimension of the concepts involved, called in the Rebbe's language B'pnimis Yonim. One of the characteristics of a census is that everyone is counted equally, even the greatest of the great. A person with genuine virtues and innate importance is not counted as more than one. Similarly, the lowest of the low is not counted as less than one. From this it is understood that the cherished quality of the Jewish people, which is expressed by counting them, does not relate to their individual virtues. In that context, there can be distinctions between one Jew and another when we're talking about their individual qualities, but rather to their fundamental Jewish core, their essence, their Nekudas Hayadus, that is shared by all Yidden, by all Jews equally. This fundamental Nekudas Hayadus Jewish core is intrinsically too lofty to be revealed in ordinary day-to-day experience. Therefore, although Hashem knows the number of the Jewish people without having to count them, nevertheless He commanded that they be counted so that the counting would reveal their essential Nikudas Hayadus, Jewish core. This concept is reflected in Rashi's choice of wording on an earlier pasuk, where he first explained that Hashem counts the Jews to make known their cherished quality, meaning counting expresses and makes known the unique cherished quality of the Jewish people that endows them with a specific virtue. Section 4. On this basis, it is also possible to explain Rashi's words. He counts them at all times. The Rebbe is going to ask about the words kol shah at all times. On the surface, that statement requires much clarification. True, in the period between Yetzias Mitzrayim, the exodus from Egypt, and Rosh Chodesh Iyar, the first of the second month of the second year after their exodus from the land of Egypt, which is in our Parsha, the day of the census that is mentioned in this Torah reading, only slightly more than a year had passed. And yet, the Jews were counted already 3 times. The counting of the beginning of the Seder is the 3rd time that the Eden were counted. However, from the counting at the beginning of this week's Seder, a very long time, 38 years passed, until the next time the Jews were counted in the 40th year of their journey through the desert. Moreover, in the many years afterwards until the present days, the Jews have been counted very rarely. Indeed, the Medrash states that over the entire course of history until the present, the Jews have been counted only 9 times, and the 10th census will be after the coming of Mashiach. How then is it appropriate to say that Hashem counts them at all times? In simple terms, it can be said that when using the phrase kol shah at all times, Rashi does not mean at every opportunity or often, but rather at every unique time when the Jewish people went through a significant positive change in the degree to which Hashem cherishes them, and therefore a new census was necessary. However, even so, the words kol shah at all times are not entirely appropriate. In the language of the Rebbe, it says as nish glatik. Based on the above, that the purpose of the census is to reveal our people's fundamental Jewish core, the Nekudas Hayadus, it is possible to offer a non-literal interpretation of Rashi's words about kol shah. The revelation of the fundamental Jewish core, the Nekudas Hayadus, that is achieved through the census, becomes manifest and has an effect kol shah at all times. When a Jew is compelled to serve a false deity, heaven forbid, chas v'sholem, and similarly when the Yetzer Hara compels a Jew to commit any Aveda transgression, the Jew could possibly make the following rationalization. Since nothing can stand in the way of tshuva, and through tshuva, motivated by love, a sin can even be uprooted from the outset. How terrible is it, he can rationalize, that for a brief moment he will be cut off from Hashem, chas v'sholem, heaven forbid. After all, he always has the possibility to return to Hashem through tshuva. By doing so, he would correct his past action, uprooting it entirely. So, what he might justify serving a false god, chas v'sholem. Even so, we see that when faced with such challenges, no Jew will act in this way. By nature, a Jew is willing to sacrifice his life, so he will not be separated from Hashem even for a moment. He does not consider the possibility that afterwards he can correct his conduct through tshuva. The reason for this inner motivation is that Hashem's light that is enclosed in a Jew's soul is above time and rules over it and dominates it. This is what Alter Rebbe says in Tanya. and concerning why a Yid is willing to be moisen nefesh, to give up his life rather than bow down to Avodah Zarah. Accordingly, when it comes to a Jew separating himself from Hashem, there is no difference between a brief moment and a lengthy span of time from the standpoint of that fundamental godly core. Being cut off from Hashem for even one moment is as unthinkable as being cut off from Him for a longer time. This is the implication of Rashi's wording that Hashem counts the Jewish people Kol Shah, Moinosim Kol Shah at all times. His counting of the Jewish people, meaning his highlighting their fundamental Nikudas Hayadis Jewish core, affects them and guards them Kol Shah at all times. There is not even a brief moment when a Jew, when it is not influencing a Jew's conduct. Accordingly, a Jew will never willingly separate himself from Hashem for even the slightest amount of time. True, a person who sins can correct his actions afterwards. However, until he corrects his actions, he is separate from Hashem. Rather than remain separate for that brief moment, a Jew will be willing to cast away any calculations and sacrifice himself to have Mesiras Nefesh because his godly core, his Nikudas Hayadus, has been aroused and rules over him. He is counted as all times. He's Moine Kol Shah. Section 5. On this basis, we can understand the significance of the difference between the three instances when the Jews were counted that Rashi cites. A, when the Jews left Mitzrayim, Egypt. B, when many of their number died after the Chet HaEgel, which took place before the Hakamas HaMishkan, the erection of the sanctuary. And C, on Rosh Chodesh Iyar, the first of Iyar, after the Hakamas HaMishkan. There are also three manifestations of the effect of the revelation of the Jewish core, the Nekudas Hayadus, on the Jewish people, that is reflected and expressed in these three time periods. A, on a basic level, even after a person's Nekudas Hayadus is revealed within him and has affected him to the extent that he's prepared to actually be moiser nefesh, sacrifice his life for his Judaism, his conscious powers, his mindset, his feelings, etc., remain as they were before. He's willing to give up his life, but his intellect didn't change, his emotions didn't change. To cite an example, Tanya states that even those Jews who are kal shebekalim, most lax in observance, are prepared to be moiser nefesh, sacrifice themselves al kiddush Hashem, in the sanctification of Hashem's name. Tanya is referring to such a person as a kal shebekalim, the most lax in observance, even when at that very moment he is prepared to sacrifice his life for Hashem's sake. How do those two things fit together? You're calling him a kal shebekalim, you're saying he's right to be moiser nefesh. Why? Because his inner self has not changed, and it is possible that he would commit other averos, other transgressions. He's only willing and able to give up his life, not to bow down to Avodah Zarah, not to serve other gods. But when it comes to something else, he has not been changed when it comes to anything else. B, on a deeper level, the arousal of a person's Nekudas Hayadus Jewish core will also affect his conscious power, his powers, his mind, and other conscious powers like his feelings and action will appreciate and become committed to the values that reflect his Nekudas Hayadus, his inner core. Nevertheless, simultaneously, even though it will change and affect his inner core, it will be perceptible that his intellectual acceptance is not rooted in his understanding alone. It's not coming from him. Instead, there's another power, his inner Jewish core, that influences and molds his thought processes. It's not truly him that is coming up with these new attitudes and these new ideas and so on. See, the ultimate level is when the Jewish person's Jewish core permeates his entire being, becoming the totality of his existence. As a natural consequence, his mind understands and dictates that his entire being becomes aligned with that Nekudas Hayadus inner core, and his actual conduct accord with it. This is the difference between the three censuses mentioned above. At the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim, the exodus from Egypt, the Jews' simple faith in God shone within them to the extent that they lovingly followed after him in the desert in an unsown land. Lech dich achrei Bamidbar be'eretz lo yizruah. Nevertheless, this did not affect their conscious powers. The erection of the sanctuary and the fulfillment of the command, make a sanctuary for me, Vasili Migdash, was intended to bring about Hashem's promise that V'shachanti b'soichem, I will dwell amongst them, meaning that Hashem would rest within the Jewish people in such a manner that this would permeate each Jew's inner being. Consequently, beforehand, a second census was necessary. The endearment that was revealed through the counting after Yetzias Mitzrayim, the exodus from Egypt, did not suffice, because with the construction of the Mishkan, the sanctuary, the acknowledgement of that endearment, meaning the revelation of the Jewish core, had to be manifest in a much deeper manner. It had to permeate and have an effect on the conscious powers of the soul, because the promise, V'shachanti b'soichem, I will dwell among them, implies that one's conscious powers be fit for the revelation of Hashem's presence in them. So it's like something coming from above, like how the Mesiras Nefesh, the second stage, how the Mesiras Nefesh affects and influences his soul powers. Afterwards, following the Akamas HaMishkan, the erection of the sanctuary, when the Jews already carried out the avodah in the Mishkan, and through that they themselves became a Mishkan for Hashem, a sanctuary for Hashem, not only because of the initiative from above, but also through their own avodas Hashem. A third census was necessary. This revealed that the endearment of the Jewish people, the revelation of the Nekudas Hayadus, came because of their conscious powers. They are already redefined and remade themselves as explained above. Section 6. On this basis, we can also understand why the census that followed the erection of the sanctuary, the Akamas HaMishkan, was not taken until the first of year to Rosh Chodesh year, like we have in our Parsha, and why, together with Moshe, Aaron had to participate in counting the Jewish people. The difference between Nisan, the month of the Geula of redemption, when Yetzias Mitzrayim took place, and Iyar, the month associated with the counting of the Omer, Sfiras Omer, can be explained as follows. Nisan involves drawing down divine revelation from above. We say in the Haggadah, Nigla Aleim Melech Malcha Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ga'olam, the Eibishter revealed himself upon them and took them out. It wasn't their doing. While Iyar involves elevating man and the material realm in which he lives, that's the whole point of Iyar, which is entirely involved with Sfiras HaOmer, that the person is improving and changing themselves from below. A similar difference, whether it's above to below, exists with regards to Moshe and Aaron. Moshe is called Shushvina, the Malka, the groomsman of the king. His mission is to draw down godliness from above. Aaron is Shushvina the Matronisa, the attendant of the queen, whose mission is to elevate the Jewish people in their ascent from their lowly state. The census taken after the Akamas HaMishkan, the erection of the sanctuary, was not only in order to bring about the revelation of the Nekudas Hayadus in and of itself, a motif resembling revelation from above, but that it should also be evoked by and permeate the people's conscious powers themselves, a motif resembling ascent from a lower to a higher state. Therefore, it had to be carried out by Moshe and Aaron together, because Aaron was about coming from below to above, and it was to be carried out specifically on Rosh Chodesh of the Chodesh Hasheni, Be'echad l'Chodesh Hasheni, the first to the second month, when not only had godliness been drawn down from above, which is what Nisan is about, but also the service of ascending from lower levels already begun, which is what which the month of Iyar is about. Section 7. This also represents the connection between Parshas Bamidbar, which begins with the tzivui, the command to take a census, and Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, like the Rebbe was mentioned at the beginning of the Sicha. The Hebrew phrase that communicates the command Su'u es Rosh begins in other words, Su'u es Rosh, meaning the counting of the Eden, begins with the word Su'u, which shares the same root letters as the Hebrew word for marriage, Nisu'in, and thus can be said to point to a connection with the giving of the Torah, the wedding between Hashem and the Jewish people. Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, brought about two new developments. The higher realms, Elyonim, Yerdu Tachtoinim, descended to the lower realms, and Tachtoinim, Yalu, the lower realms, ascended to the higher realms, to the Elyonim, as a preparation for the union between Hashem and the Jewish people, according to both motifs, drawing down Hashem's infinite light into the spiritual source of the Jewish people and elevating the spiritual source of the Jewish people to Hashem's Ein Sof, infinite light. Therefore, in connection with that, we read the Torah's description of the census that took place at Be'echad L'Chodesh Hasheni, on the first of the second month, which follows and complements the first month and the godly light that drew down. So in other words, you have both. You have the month of Nisan, which is like the Elyonim Yedul Tachtoinim, and you have the Rosh Chodesh Iyar, which is Tachtoinim Yalu Elyonim. This census was taken by both Moshe, Sheshvina the Malka, the groomsman and the king, and Aaron, the Sheshvina the Matronissa, the attendant of the queen. This reading thus serves as a preparation for the union achieved by the reliving of Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah on Shavuos, which celebrates how, through the Torah, Yisrael, Araisav, Kuchabrichu, Kul Echad, Israel, and the Holy One, blessed be He, are entirely one.